Hello, young ladies and young gentlemen. Welcome back to our YouTube series as a prelude to our School of Applied Computer Science. Today, I want to talk to you about the JavaScript DRAW tool. This is a really exciting idea for creating new jobs and raising productivity. And I want to talk to you about the enormous philosophical implications that this idea and others like it will have for our School of Applied Computer Science. Now, as you know from previous YouTube lectures, I want us to build a School of Applied Computer Science that is very different from any other School of Computer Science in the United States. A big question is where? That is not the subject of this YouTube talk. One candidate is New Hampshire, but I'm not going to talk about that here. But this is not like other schools. Ladies and gentlemen, this is not like other schools. Students in our school will develop a creativity, an imagination, an open-mindedness that American employees today, not 50 years ago, do not have. Students in our school, ladies and gentlemen, will develop a willingness to explore and experiment that American employees today do not have. And the result, ladies and gentlemen, the result will be an army of students/workers, students who quickly become workers after a 6-month educational program. The result will be an army of students/workers that have worker productivity levels that are twice as high, or maybe 3 times as high, or maybe higher. So an army of students/workers that have developed worker productivity levels for a wide variety of technical tasks, web development, data analysis, what have you, that is much, much, much higher than the worker productivity levels of American employees who do that work today. Now, folks, in order to get improvements in worker productivity and other practical benefits such as accessibility and usability and creating more jobs by making the tools easier to learn, meaning you have more workers who can use those tools, as well as the worker productivity level priorities. Folks, in order to get those practical outcomes, you need experiments of creativity and imagination that the Americans have chosen not to pursue for the past 30 years. One of the initiatives that these experiments of creativity and imagination lead to is what I call the JavaScript DRAW tool. So let's talk about front-end development. You have front-end development, back-end development. I don't care about back-end development today. Front-end development, that's drafting and refining web pages, the visual layouts and all the stuff inside. Web page development, usually with CSS and JavaScript. It's time consuming, it's tedious, it's a lot of drudge work. It can take a long time and a lot of tedious technical drudge work to get a final outcome, even though that final outcome is simple and intuitive and visual and obvious. Folks, that is a problem. Now, gurus, those really smart tech leaders in the CSS and JavaScript community, they talk about innovation. Talk is cheap. They throw the word innovation around like it's confetti. They talk about how they're being innovative. Talk is cheap. And they come up with stuff like Bootstrap and Bootstrap 4 and jQuery. And all these things can be very useful in the proper context, but they all share the same limitation and the same premise, the same assumption. What is that premise that they share? You write, or you read, or you modify files and files of CSS code. You have to maintain files and files of CSS code. The premise being that's not going to change. That'll still be the case a few years from now. You write, read, modify, and maintain JavaScript code, and again, that's even more time consuming, and again, the premise is don't expect that to change in the next 5 years. All these quote-unquote innovations, bootstrap or whatever, require that you still read CSS code, require that you still modify and maintain countless files of CSS code. And people, remember this is important. Remember, CSS is a very complicated technical standard. CSS is not easy. It's got so many technical nooks and crannies. It's not all that intuitive. Visual draw out the web page is supposed to be intuitive. CSS is not intuitive, folks. So CSS is a very complicated technical standard. And don't even get me started about JavaScript, because whatever the learning curve for CSS, you can double that for JavaScript. And I also want you to remember, folks, that when you're working with CSS for drafting web pages, you are faced with what I call a very painful eye-glazing cognitive switch. It's a three-way switch. And here are the three regions. Because it's best to separate out the CSS from the HTML, it's not only a two-way cognitive switch, it's a three-way cognitive switch. You're forced to go back and forth between three areas. Areas of code where you have CSS syntax. Pretty technical, not always intuitive. That's one. Two, areas of code where you have bloated and verbose HTML syntax. That's two. Three is the area of the web page where you are looking for the desired intuitive visual result. So hour by hour, minute by minute, your brain and your eyes constantly have to switch back and forth between these three different regions. This constant three-way back and forth is eye-glazing, it's exhausting, and it's time-consuming. And it does lower productivity. It takes longer to get the work done if the process is mentally exhausting. Some people call this a cognitive switch. When you're forced to switch mind and eyes back and forth among many different areas of code, productivity drops. And you develop fatigue, you get tired faster. Now, here's my main point. You have a lot of usability and productivity problems that I pointed out today. What you need to understand is these so-called innovations that the CSS gurus have come up with over the past 20 years do nothing whatsoever to solve the problems that I speak of today. Nothing. And that means you need a more open-minded, broad-based willingness to explore and experiment. You need a willingness to explore and experiment areas of possibilities that CSS gurus and JavaScript gurus have not been willing to experiment with or explore over the past 20 years. Now, that's where the JavaScript DRAW tool comes in. And this YouTube lecture is already getting pretty long, but I will say that the draw tool implemented in JavaScript, but you don't need to know JavaScript. The person who uses the draw tool does not know any JavaScript or CSS. It's for sketching out web pages in a visual, intuitive manner, flexible and quick, all kinds of different layouts and visual choices, and you don't need to be proficient in either CSS syntax or JavaScript syntax. It's powerful, it's flexible, it's intuitive. I'm going to cover more of the practical details of the product design of it in the next YouTube video. But before I end this video, which is getting pretty long, before I end this YouTube video, I want to do a quick bird's eye, quick sketch of what the draw tool is going to do. So a web page consists of boxes. A web page consists of boxes, horizontal and vertically placed left to right, and you want to be able to draw out these boxes in a totally intuitive visual manner. So that's the first aspect of the JavaScript DRAW tool. So it'll be like, okay, we're going to have a top section. In the main section underneath, well, we're going to divide that into a left and right section. And oh, midway through the design process, I decided that my right panel is going to have to be subdivided a little bit further along. And so you want to be able to draw out these sketching ideas in a totally intuitive way, like an 8-year-old kid with a white pad of paper and a magic marker would do, or a crayon. You want it to be that intuitive. In addition, another aspect of the draw tool is you pick a certain region. Okay, I want to change what's inside here. So I identify this as the area of the web page I'm going to edit. Boom, pops up an auxiliary panel underneath. This is the part of the web page that I'm currently editing. And so I want a helper panel, an auxiliary panel, what I call an alligator panel. I'll talk about why I chose that word later. But it'll pop up in the right place. Here's the area I want to edit. And here's the panel that may help me edit that will pop up in the right place. And then I have an array of features inside here for putting information into this area here, or information that is in there, modifying it and doing it in a way that is intuitive and visual and makes the person's life a lot easier. And that does mean that the alligator panel will have a number of user-friendly features, including, for example, a text box inside. You type in here to make changes to the text inside. You could have a text, you could have an image, you could have a combination of text and images, and as time goes on you'll have a more complicated possibility of stuff that can go inside here as more and more development goes into the development of the JavaScript DRAW tool. And more details will come in the next YouTube video, but this thing will be super intuitive, super easy to use, and it's going to be real innovation and not like those boneheads throughout the tech industry who toss around the word innovation like it's confetti. Thank you very much. Thank you for your time. Let's work together to build this exciting new school of applied computer science.